Well, as I started saying, I've been involved in development projects in Asia and Africa in over 30 countries. And if you were to ask me about my most cherished memories, meeting a woman by the name of Rokeya would be among the 5. And I'll tell you why. Rokeya is a very bright and resourceful woman who lives in a very remote village in northern Senegal. She never had the opportunity to have any education. She was married off at a very young age. And when I met her, at 40, she was already a grandmother of 4. What was interesting about my meeting with Rokeya was that she had this mobile phone that she had bought for herself. It was a black and white big Nokia. And she bought it because her husband worked in Dakar, in the capital city of Senegal. And the only way for her to communicate with her husband was to ask the help of the village chief, which she didn't want to do. So she saved money and she bought this mobile phone. But then she realized that calling Dakar from her village was expensive and texting was free. Now, I did mention that she's very bright and resourceful, right? So what she did next was enroll in a UNESCO-sponsored adult literacy program to learn how to read and write so she could write text messages to her husband, which she did. But that's not all. She offered her services to other village women, so she made friends and some money on the side. But she was also able to help her grandchildren do their homework. The phone basically changed Rokeya's life. And when she told me about her accomplishments and her newly elevated status in the village, it's an image I will never forget. We both had tears in our eyes when she showed me how she could do this by composing a message for her husband on the phone, telling him about our meeting. On the way back to Dakar that evening, I thought about another life-changing technology, which is commonly known as the pill, not the blue one that came much later, but the one that was introduced in 1960. And this was the birth control pill that changed the world for women. You see, the pill was the instrument, the means through which, for the first time in history, women could assume their sexual identity without fear of unwanted pregnancies. The pill gave women control over their bodies and therefore their lives. After meeting Rokeya with her phone, I wondered if the phone could be the next pill, or if the phone could help us continue the work that we started with the pill 50-odd years earlier. You see, the phone, the pill is a bit similar to what I will call the phone for the purposes of this talk, but which really refers to the combined technologies of the internet, the computer, and the smartphone. As you know, these technologies are hailed as the most important technological innovation in the last 30 years. They are hailed for their openness, for creating space for different voices, for transforming the lives of many, including women. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that, and I want to explore whether it's all rosy as is claimed. Now, the rosy picture problems many inequalities of the real life, and I want to talk to you about 3 of the inequalities that are specifically related to gender. The first inequality is about access. The second inequality is about unequal representation of women in technology and content development. And the third inequality is about the threatened presence of girls and women in cyberspace. Let me say just a few words about unequal access. Globally, 37% of women are online. 25% fewer women than men have access in the developing world, and the gender gap soars up to 45% in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, access is an important issue, but it's more on the commercial side of the equation. So many companies and governments are trying to find solutions and to make these technologies, both the infrastructure and the devices, more affordable and more accessible. There are many research projects going on at the moment. It will take some time, but the prices will come down, we are told, and there will be broader access. I don't know if the prices will be at levels that poor women in rural communities and in less developed areas can afford, but we shall have to wait and see. The second inequality is related to who controls the production and who controls content, who participates in the production of technology and content. It's no secret that IT companies are managed and the products are designed, developed, manufactured, and distributed by what we call the male, the pale, and the privileged. So when we look at some of the facts and figures, I don't think we'll be surprised. The number of women directors in IT companies, number of companies that have no women are 43%, as you see in the image here. And if we go to the next slide, there are some more figures here. I will not go through each one separately, but just to give you an idea about the unequal representation of women in computer science and tech jobs. Now, you will ask why this is important. And before I answer the question, let me also tell you that women in higher education or women in the pipeline who are getting ready to get these jobs, there's also a worrying trend there because the numbers are dropping, the percentages are dropping. As you see, in 1985, 37% of computer science graduates were women. In 2009, the percentage went down to 18%. Why is this important, you will ask me? Well, it's an imbalance in the labor market. Number two, we now have a lot of evidence from different sources that companies with more women perform better, have better profit rates, and all the rest. But I'm also worried about the end product, the product that they produce. And for this, I give the example of the car. Can you think of a car, any car, including the minivans, which are supposedly designed for moms, that have a space for women drivers to put their purse? Now, male drivers have thought of everything. Space for coins, space for iPhones, place for cups, you name it, it's in the car in an accessible manner for the male driver. But we have yet to see a car designed for women drivers. So it's the same thing for this technology. Again, there is hope because one of the issues with the dearth of women in higher education in IT sectors, but also dearth of women in IT companies, is the fact that in 2018, the 4 main IT companies in the United States, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple, will have 650,000 jobs to be filled. And the supply chain is not able to deal with this demand. So many organizations, including my own, UNESCO, and companies and governments are coming up with different initiatives, first to increase the number of girls and young women studying these subjects, which we call STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and then to have more women in these jobs. As I said, there is hope, although it's in the horizon, not immediately. The third problem I really want to talk a little bit more detail in a little bit more detail, and about which we can do something now, is what I called the cyber misogyny. You may have heard about cyberbullying, cyber stalking. Threats and violence against girls and women in the cyberspace are reaching really serious proportions. Cyberbullying is a very serious problem for many, but especially for young girls. In the best of cases, it leads to virtual banishment from the internet. In the worst cases, it leads to suicide. Threats against women in Twitter, those who dare to express an opinion are rampant. In fact, an author, Laurie Penny, I think, who wrote the book Cyber Sexism, she calls women who express an opinion in the cyberspace the miniskirts of the internet. Cyber stalking is especially a problem for women. They are affected 4 times more, and it's especially serious for victims of domestic violence. Attacks against women on the internet, they are very sexual and quite violent. And when women complain about these things, when they want something to be done about these things, they are told to lighten up, and they are sometimes accused of being stifling free speech, and they are told, well, it's only locker room banter, don't take it seriously, it's not real, it's virtual, and they are asked to find their own coping mechanisms as if this is a personal problem. You will be surprised to know that almost on a daily basis, I read about yet another case of serious cyber bullying, stalking, and threat and violence against not only young girls and young women, but also women in every professional category. And it's a problem because some of the coping mechanisms involve reduced presence on the web, in the cyberspace. This is a mechanism that women use, and sometimes some of them simply leave. They don't want to have anything to do with this cyberspace. But of course, it's a problem because most of the professions now, most of the career advancements depend on your presence in the cyberspace. So this forced decision on women to leave the space because they don't want to experience threats and violence is not a practical one. Before I leave you, I want to mention one other thing, which was emphasized by a South Korean colleague of mine, a young colleague of mine, when we were discussing this talk. She gave me the example of her younger sister, teenage sister, who lives in South Korea and who has a lot of access to the internet and spends a lot of time on the internet. She told me that her sister has less ambitions and less complicated dreams about her future because of her exposure to the internet. This is partly because existing gender stereotypes are not only reflected, but they are amplified in the cyberspace, in videos, in images, and in games that are available on the internet for multi-user purposes. So this is a very serious issue for young people everywhere, but I think it's especially an issue for young girls who have this kind of unlimited access to the internet. And I thought this cartoon really illustrates the point very well. This little girl is telling her mother, who wants to talk to her about feminism, that she will only listen to it if she allows her to buy this beauty app. So recent studies show that more young women want to become supermodels than Nobel laureates, and I think that's a really worrying trend. To recap, we have a technology, the internet, the computer, the smartphone, which is really very promising. It can be transformatory, it can be equalizing, it can open up space for those who did not have space before. But for this space to be equal and open, we really need to act, and we really need to do something. As I mentioned, there are things that are being done by different institutions, by governments on the education front, on the policy front. But I think action is something that everybody can do. As we all know, societal action, societal change, social change starts with individual actions. So I will ask each and every one of you who is here today to take action against this insidious attack against the rights of girls and women to have full and equal access to the cyberspace. And I want you to think about your peers, your friends, your sisters, your daughters, your partners, and to take action and to say, stop this threats, stop this violence, and stop this negative stereotyping on the internet. Thank you very much.